There we go. Hi, Allison. Thanks for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Well, good morning, Nathan. I'm happy to help with your project. My name is Alison Ivy. I have been married for 35 years to my husband, Frank. We have two children, Tyler, who's 29, and Haley is 27. I am a teacher, middle school teacher, teach dyslexic intervention to students who are struggling readers. I was a teacher for 28 years in public education, but mainly elementary. And then I retired and decided, I might give it another shot. And here I am again, back in the classroom after a 4-year hiatus. So it's been a little bit of a challenging year, but I still like working with kids. So it's keeping me busy, though, that's for sure. Some of my hobbies include watching movies, watching football and baseball. I love reading. I love trying new restaurants, and I like to travel.
So what are some of the things that make you most excited about teaching middle schoolers?
Well, middle school kids are hard. I'm not gonna pretend that they're not. They're pretty moody and excuse me. The thing I like teaching is reading. I like teaching kids to read because if you are a fluid, confident reader, that really affects your whole life trajectory, because reading is a skill you need for no matter what field you're in. So I like to teach kids to read and to enjoy reading. Now, the kids I'm working with are in middle school, and they've been identified with dyslexia, so they've been struggling readers their whole educational career. So it's frustrating for them, and it's frustrating for the teachers because we have to try and get them excited about something that they really would rather do anything else but do. So it's been a challenging year, but it's also been a good year because I feel like I'm making connections with some of my kids, not all of them, but some of them I'm making a connection to. So I'm just going to keep plugging away.
I guess for those kids that are really
excuse me,
no worries. For those kids that are really fluid readers, like, is it because they started reading at a really early age, or like what's?
Some children are just natural born readers, just like some people are natural born mathematicians. Like I am not a natural born mathematician. I don't remember numbers. I don't calculate things in my head. Like I need a calculator still. I mean, and I'm like old, right? My husband, he's a banker, so numbers are his life. He understands numbers. He likes numbers. I mean, obviously he can read. He's got a master's degree, but that's his wheelhouse, right? Working with numbers and finances. And that's the last thing I want to work with. But some people's brains are just wired to be successful at one thing or another thing. And students who are dyslexic, they have a processing disorder. So your brain is processing the language in a different way. And the English language is very complex because we're made up of many other languages that have kind of come together. And 20% of the words in our language don't follow the rules. So even if you learn a rule, 2 out of every 10 words aren't going to follow the rule. So that's frustrating for a student who, first of all, can't remember what all the rules are. And then there's a word that doesn't even follow the rules. So it's challenging for those students. But I used to teach first grade at a very high income school. And I had first graders come to me who were already reading on a 3rd grade level. Like they started reading when they were like 4 or 5. They came to kindergarten already reading. And a lot of that has to do with their home environment. Because if parents are working with their children when they're infants and reading to them and they're listening to the language and they're learning their alphabet when they're 2 and, having access to books and holding books and being around books, they're going to be more excited about it and they're going to be interested because they're like little sponges. They just soak up all that information. So some kids come to school with an advantage because they've already had 2 or 3 years of experience with text. Some parents don't read to their kids at all, for whatever reason. And those kids come to school without that experience and they're already behind because they don't have that literature rich experience at their home. And between the ages of 2 and 4, your brains are just like so ready to absorb whatever information it is that they're absorbing, whether it's written language or numeracy or science or language or whatever. Their brains are just primed and ready. So parents who know that, and parents who are educated, and parents who have resources, those kids come to school better prepared. And some kids are just smarter than others. I can never be a NASA engineer. I can never work with science and technology. Doesn't mean I'm not smart. I just have intelligence in a different way. So different kids have different strengths and weaknesses, just like adults.
So I know there's over the past few decades, there's been emphasis on trying to make sure that kids had access to 4 years of college or 2 years of college. And we've seen some growth the opposite direction too with like pre-K. Do you see kind of like in the future, maybe a bigger public investment in those years between like 0 and 5?
Unfortunately, I do not at this point in time because education is in a state of turmoil right now because of COVID, because we're still trying to recover from those lost 2 years of instruction. Because many of our students didn't set foot in the classroom for 18 months. So then they had Zoom teaching, but that was a joke for most kids. How can you teach on Zoom to a kindergartner? You really can't. They have the attention span of like 3 minutes, maybe 5. So a lot of instruction was lost during those COVID years, and it's no one's fault. It's just the reality of what happened. And then the older children, like middle school, high school age kids, they're more mature, but they don't care. They're more interested in TikTok and social media and hanging out with their friends and not so much interested in school. And they had that time where they got to be kind of lazy, not all kids, but they got to be kind of lazy. And then when we had to pull them back in, it was tough. It's tough to pull them back to 6.5 hours of school every day.
Is it the same thing you have after a summer break and to a lesser extent, winter break?
Exactly. But I think there are some districts that are investing in pre-K, but to be honest, we're still trying. Most districts are just trying to get teachers to stay in the classroom. There's a huge teacher turnover. Teachers are very overworked and unhappy. I retired. So once you retire, you aren't supposed to be able to go back to the classroom. When you retire, you're supposed to be done because you get your TRS pension and then bye. Okay, I'm done. They're so desperate for teachers, they hire me back as a retired teacher because I couldn't find anybody because I have a dyslexia certification and a special education certification. They couldn't find anybody, so they had to pay a surcharge to TRS, Texas Teacher Retirement System. They have to pay a surcharge to hire me over and above my salary to pay the TRS insurance. Because when you're a public education teacher, every month you pay 6% of your salary into TRS, which is your retirement, and the district pays 6% in every year. So at the end of 30 years of service, then you have this annuity that you are able to draw on for the rest of your life. So I'm getting my annuity still, but then I'm also getting I'm also working 8 to noon, half day. I'm getting my salary, and Round Rock IC is having to pay that 6% surcharge to TRS. And that's how desperate they were for teachers. Like, okay. So yeah, I don't know if education is ready break new ground because I think we're still trying to recover from COVID.
I'm wondering if part-time teachers might be the way of the future. You have these professionals that might pick up, especially in high school,
Yeah.
pick up a particular class, and then they could bring in a little bit of that professional experience and workplace experience to that one class, and maybe it's
Well,
not so much.
funny story. When I went to my new teacher orientation, because it's no matter how long you've been teaching, when you get rehired, you have to go to new teacher orientation. So, I went to that. And there were 3 people at my table, and all of us were like older. I mean, I won't say old, but we were all like, not new teachers. One gentleman was like retired from the military, and he was working with a special education teacher as an assistant, helping out. And then another individual, he was also retired military, and he was going to teach a drone class at Round Rock High School.
Hmm.
2 periods, 2 periods a day, which in high school, they only have 4 periods a day because they do the block schedule.
Hmm.
So he was only going to really teach every other day, which that sounds nice. But he'd never been a teacher before, didn't have certification to be a teacher, but he was a drone pilot.
Hmm.
And so he was going to teach his drone class at Round Rock High School, which that's pretty cool. So that's an example of that. He's not a teacher, but he was going to teach this drone class to Round Rock High School as an elective. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, what do you find inspires your kids the most in the classroom?
I think the fact that if they complete my program, they don't have to take dyslexia classes anymore, and they can get another elective, because they have to give up an elective to be in my class, and that's kind of a downer. So if they can make it 80% mastery on the curriculum that I'm teaching, then next year they don't have to take this class again, and they can have a fun, more enjoyable class. So I think that's their prime motivation to get out of my class, which I don't take that personally. I get it. If I was a 7th grader, I would want to be in choir or drama or whatever my passion is, and not taking another English class. So they already have to take one English class, like the regular grade level English, and then they have to take my class. And my class isn't that exciting. It's really phonetic based and spelling. It's not a lot of fun. It's pretty dry, and I have to follow this prescribed program. So it's not like it's the greatest thing ever. It's really not. And I get it, because I had to teach it. So I understand how boring it can be. So for a 7th grader or an 8th grader, it makes it be much better to be in an elective that they enjoy. So I think their primary focus is just to get through the class so they can be done with it. And I get it. I really do.
Well, I wanted to get your thoughts on us going back to the moon and the future of humanity as well. I guess first off, and this may seem like a silly question considering our history, but did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
Because of the Space Minute. Yes, I do. I learned so much from your Space Minute. That's probably like my favorite part of the Rotary meeting. I'm not gonna lie. It's very interesting.
What do you think about it?
Well, I think that it's exciting, but I also think that it's for the, I don't know if the cost benefit is really worth it. And I know you're, work for NASA, so you have a different perspective, but to me, just think of all, I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars does the development of that take to get a human back to the moon. I don't know how much money is that.
Well, I
A
mean,
lot.
NASA's budget this year is like $25 billion,
I
and
mean,
that
that's
covers, yeah, that covers the all of the human space flight, the robotics, everything. But to put that in context, the military budget is like 750 billion.
Yeah, I mean, that's just ridiculous to me. That's just so much money. But I mean, I'm not a science fiction kind of TV watcher, but my husband is. My husband loves all those shows. I mean, I watch them because he's watching them. But when you think about the technology that we have now, I think anything seems to be possible. It seems like anything should be possible. And why shouldn't we explore that? Because the earth has got so many concerns and so many problems. And if there's another place where we can sustain life, I think it's worth investigating.
But you mentioned you watch some science fiction that your husband watched. But I'm kind of curious in what you think like the future of humanity might look like, say in 200 years. Do you still see us all on the Earth, maybe with flying cars, or do you see us on
Mm,
the Earth and then also other places, like maybe we
you
have,
know, I
you know,
think that other places are possible because we are just one tiny speck when you look at the universe. And Earth is just a tiny little place. But to people, those of us who live here, it's all we know, right? We don't know anything else. But in our perspective, this is our whole. This is our universe, Earth. But in reality, Earth is just a tiny speck in the universe, and who knows what's out there, and who knows what's possible. So why can't humans live in a satellite in space and continue life in a different format? Why not? It's possible. I think anything in 200 years, if we have, who knows what's going to happen with the ozone and the pollution? Are we even going to be able to sustain the amount of humanity who lives here with the resources that we have? Are we going to have enough resources? I mean, doesn't look too promising to me sometimes when you read the paper and you look at all the news and talk to, Joan, is such an environmentalist. And when I spoke to Joan about a couple of things, I was like, it's scary. Is there gonna be enough resources for us to have clean air and clean water to drink and enough soil to feed everyone? It's a scary thought. So why not move on, explore other possibilities?
of course, if you look at like biological ecosystems, like the material in those systems gets constantly reused and rechanged. Like the plants and animals decay, and then that becomes the basis for the next plants and animals. But if you look at the like civilization as an organism, I mean, we're producing piles of stuff that don't get reused. And I kind of see that as being the key to a sustainable future is having a more circular material thing. I mean, we have plenty of material. We just need to be able to transform it into the things that we need it to be.
Well, a while ago, I read this fiction book that I don't remember the name of it because I read a lot of books. And in this book, it was based in Connecticut. Right? And I don't know if this is accurate because I actually never really researched this. But Connecticut's a pretty small state, but it's got a high density of people who live there, I think. And they take all their trash and incinerate it.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know if that's completely accurate, but usually when you read a fiction book, the author does some research, I would think. But then I thought, well, that sounds like a great idea until I thought about it a little more. I'm like, yeah, but then all that gunk is from the trash is going into the air and the ozone. That's not such a great plan either. So, we seem to generate quite a bit of trash. And plastic doesn't decompose and it just piles up. And I also watched this documentary on the ocean that was just sickening. And they used to take the trash. They used to take the trash on barges and just take it out and dump it in the ocean. I'm like, what? Whoever thought that was a good idea? Yeah. And then I watched over the break, I watched this Bermuda Triangle special on the History Channel. Did you watch that?
Mm-mm.
It's like a 6 episode Bermuda Triangle thing about there's hundreds of downed ships and planes in the Bermuda Triangle.
Hmm.
It was fascinating. And they're talking about the weather anomalies and this the the jet stream and this big wave of water that I forgot the name of that comes up, and all these weird weather things that affect the compasses and the navigation, and that's why there's so many wrecks. And yeah, so basically the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle is just a big trash pile of metal and ships and planes that have crashed and sunk over the since people have been sailing and flying. It's
Hmm.
crazy. Yeah. So much trash.
That's amazing. Yeah, I know whenever I drive from South Houston to North Houston, sometimes I had to take the Beltway 8 around, and there's like I think like 4 or 5 landfills that I've noticed that make me think that if you come back in 200 years, Houston is going to be surrounded by man-made mountains.
Oh, yeah, of trash. That's true.
And so not many people know that we're going back to the moon. Like whenever I go up to people at Starbucks or at the mall, first time that they're hearing about is usually from me. I was wondering, do you get a sense from your students how many of them know that we're going to the moon?
I don't think they really do. And now that you mention it, remember when you sent those pictures from uh the telescope or
Oh, the James Webb Telescope. Yeah.
those amazing pictures that you sent us? I showed those to my students, and some of them were interested, some of them were like whatever, but a few of them were interested. And then I showed them that video of the asteroid, how that kind of pretty much like a space blaster thing. I showed them that, and 2 of my boys thought that was interesting. The girls were like, one of the girls was like, that just looks like a movie. I'm like, it's not a movie. It really happened. It's science. You got to listen. You got to pay attention to what's happening in your world. So when you're an adult, I want you to think about how much things are going to change from when you're a 7th grader 10 years from now. Who knows what's going to happen. They were not that excited, I have to say. 2 of my boys were excited about the video, but most of them were kind of like, that's nice, miss. I'm like, okay, I tried. I tried to show some current events, but I thought those pictures were amazing. I was floored by those photos. They were great.
I know, especially if you think about what they represent, the amount of space and material and potential, all this.
Yeah, it was just incredible. I just thought those pictures were incredible.
Well, I'd like to take that 200-year question and turn it around on you. So instead of living in the 2020s, imagine that you lived in the 2220s, 200 years in the future. What do you think people from that time will remember about this decade?
Very good question. Maybe how wasteful we are. I feel like our culture is very throw away what we don't need. What's the next best thing? Wasteful. I think maybe that that we didn't use the knowledge that we have to the best advantage to help the future, possibly. I mean, think about it if you look backward 200 years. From our perspective, looking back 200 years, what do we think about those people? I don't
Yeah,
know,
the
just
1820s. I'm trying to remember anything significant that is in my mind from the 1820s, and I
yeah,
really
nothing's coming up. But yeah, that's a good question, Nathan. I don't know. It's sometimes I feel like our pop culture is just so ridiculous of what people are interested in and what people focus on. I'm just like, what? That's what you care about? That's just ridiculously not important, you know? But yeah, it's interesting. And you think about, I don't know if you know very many people from Europe. I don't. I mean, personally, I do not know many people from Europe. But when I went to the Rotary Convention in Houston and I met all these people from all over the world, they just were so, it seems to me that they were different, they had a different mindset than Americans do about things. I don't know why. That I just had this feeling that Americans were just so selfish. Some of us are just so selfish, and we're only thinking about next year, next week, or next year, and not 200 years from now. I mean, who's thinking about 200 years from now? I know I'm not. I'm thinking about, okay, what am I making for dinner tonight? Make sure I get this stuff done. And, it takes a real visionary to think about what's going to happen 20 years from now, not to mention 200 years from now.
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like uh, Americans are sometimes focused on the wrong thing. But I'm in
Well,
the education world, so my view is kind of maybe different than those people in the tech or the medical world. I don't know. I mean, look how fast they got a COVID vaccine. It took forever to get other vaccines, but the COVID vaccine, they rushed it through, and here we go. And here it is in under 2 years, right? With all these great scientists, why can't they figure out a cure for cancer? They've been working on that for 40 years, 40 plus years.
hmm.
I mean, why can't they get those brains together and figure that out? I don't know. It takes smarter people than me to figure out these big problems, Nathan. Just saying. I'm just a reader
Yeah,
teacher. That's all I am.
and it's kind of interesting, in my personal circle, during the COVID thing, I know three three family members died from cancer, but none died from COVID. So
Oh.
from a priority standpoint, my personal experience, I definitely agree with you that it'd be great if we could solve the cancer thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the name of the movie. So this is kind of but it's set in the future, and it's set in space, and they're on a spaceship somewhere, and they have like this machine that they put the people in to like diagnose their medical status. It was like this little, it was almost like they were going in like a MRI kind of cocoon thing. And then they came up with like a printout that said, oh, you have a fracture in here, and you have, I mean, it was just like, I don't even remember the name of the movie, but I was like, why can't, that would be awesome. You just go into this, plug into some machine, and they're like, okay, your heart is a little weak. I mean, it was just like, okay, why can't we do that now? It was pretty cool. But anyway.
I know that's yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you think about modern technology, modern medicine in like 100, 200 years.
Mhm.
We might be, how do we survive? It
How
might
do
be like
we,
this civil war with, chopping off all the limbs and stuff every
oh,
time you get
yeah.
a little scratch. Okay, chopping off the arm. You're like, no, I don't have anything. I'm fine.
Yeah, I mean, medicine has made so many advances, it seems, but there's room for, I mean, when you see so much suffering, you wonder why there can't be more advances in the medical field. But it all has to do with funding and research, I guess, right?
Uh, and the way it's organized and the incentives. I mean, my experience with the medical system is it's largely built around procedures and kind of like fixing things. So
Mhm.
it it doesn't feel like your really primary thing isn't health, but further recovery from illness and stuff.
Yeah, it would be great if we had the opposite a viewpoint of let's see if we could prevent these things from happening. But I can't tell you how many times I've been to the doctor and the doctor has said, you need to drink more water, exercise more. I mean, I know that. But do I listen? Sometimes. Do I always listen? No. And whose fault is that? Mine? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's difficult. We all kind of have a good sense on what's healthy and not healthy, but finding
Finding the balance, right?
exactly. Exactly. Well, Allison, I really appreciate your time this
You're
morning.
so welcome, Nathan. I enjoyed visiting with you. Have a
Likewise,
great
and I
rest of
hope
the
you
Saturday.
have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I'll see you next month.
You bet. Bye bye.
Bye.